She never expected her life to change inside the 25th floor of a glass building that sparkled like a lie. Maya Collins was the lowest employee at Westbridge Communications, a global PR giant that shaped the images of corporations, politicians, and billionaires, but never cared about the people inside its own walls. She was young, quiet, and invisible. That's what they liked about her. She fetched coffees, cleaned conference rooms before big clients walked in, fixed presentation slides that directors messed up, and responded to emails the executives didn't want to deal with. They called her the kid, even though she was 24. They laughed at how polite she was. They joked about how she wore the same 2 pairs of shoes. No one ever asked why she stayed late every night or how she always made things look perfect before anyone noticed the mess. But the truth was simple. She needed the job, and she needed to stay unnoticed. Ever since her brother died 3 years ago, another case swept under the rug by powerful people, Mayo understood one thing clearly: the world didn't listen to the loud. It listened to the ones who learned how to wait. Everything changed on a rainy Thursday night. Most employees had left early because the CEO, Daniel Grayson, had flown to Dubai for a closed-door conference. Only a few security guards and cleaning staff were scattered across the building. Maya stayed behind to finish a crisis report she wasn't even supposed to be writing, another task dumped on her by her supervisor, who planned to present it as his own work the next morning. She didn't complain. She never did. Instead, she walked into the executive suite with her laptop, eyes tired, shoulders tight. The suite felt different that night. Too quiet, too cold. The automatic lights didn't turn on right away. She stepped further inside, and that's when she noticed the faint blinking on the CEO's personal screen, something she had never seen before. A warning message glowed in red. Unsent video file detected. Curious, she moved closer. She shouldn't have. But sometimes fate pulls you toward the very thing you're not supposed to touch. She tapped a key. The screen unlocked. No password, strange, a single video file sat open, timestamped for that afternoon, just hours before the CEO boarded his flight. Maya hesitated, her pulse rising, but she clicked play. The screen flickered, then showed a shaky recording inside a dark parking garage. A man's voice filled the room. "If anything happens to me, this goes public. I know what you did. I know what Westbridge is hiding." Maya froze. The man on screen was Adam Rawlings, a former senior analyst at the company. She remembered him. Quiet, smart, always reading shareholder reports during lunch. He was fired 6 months ago for security breaches, but rumors said he tried to expose something. Something big. In the video, Adam looked terrified. He kept glancing behind him as he spoke. "Daniel, you promised you'd fix it. You said no one would get hurt. But now Greta's gone. And I'm next, aren't I?" Maya's breath caught. Greta, the whistleblower who accidentally drowned during a weekend trip. The case everyone believed was a tragic accident. Adam's voice trembled. "You covered it up. You paid off the investigators. You silenced the board. But I kept the files. I kept everything. If I disappear, the world will know what Westbridge really is." The screen shook violently. Adam stumbled, gasped, looked straight at the camera, and then the video cut off. Maya leaned back slowly, her hands cold and trembling. The city lights outside the window flickered like dying stars. She knew she shouldn't have seen this. She knew opening that file could ruin her life. But something stronger than fear rose inside her when she whispered, "They killed him." Her chest tightened as the truth sank in. Adam didn't quit. He didn't run away. He was gone, and now she was holding the proof. Her mind raced. Every instinct told her to shut the laptop, erase her presence, walk away quietly. That was what Maya usually did: keep her head down, avoid trouble, survive the politics of the powerful. But this time felt different. This time she wasn't just holding a file. She was holding someone's final message. Someone who tried to ask for help and never got it. She copied the file onto her own USB drive, hands trembling. She unplugged it, tucked it deep into her pocket, and shut everything down. But before she could leave, she heard footsteps outside the executive suite, slow, heavy, too deliberate for a janitor. Too early for security checks, her heart pounded. She stepped behind the conference table, holding her breath. Two men entered, men she had never seen before. Not employees, not contractors. Dressed in plain black. One scanned the office with a flashlight. The other checked the CEO's desk, then the monitors. Files gone. The taller one muttered. Maya's blood turned to ice. The other whispered. Grayson said someone accessed the system. Searched the building. She felt her entire life shrink into the small space between her heartbeat and the shadow she hid inside. They were looking for whoever opened that file. They were looking for her. She stayed silent as the men moved through the room, checking every corner, every desk, every drawer. When they finally left, Maya waited a full minute before she dared breathe again. Then she slipped out of the room, shoes silent on the floor, her body shaking. That night, as she walked alone through the stormy streets, clutching her bag close, she knew one thing with terrifying clarity. The moment she copied that file, she stopped being Invisible Dot and people like Daniel Grayson did not let threats walk away alive. That was the beginning of her war, a war she never asked for, but one she was born to finish. Asterisk as Maya hurried down the street. The rain thickened into cold needles, soaking through her thin jacket. Taxi lights blurred across the wet pavement, but she didn't dare wave one down. She felt exposed every passing car, every shadowed corner. Every face she saw made her flinch as if someone had already found her. She kept replaying the men's voices in her head. The way they spoke with calm certainty, like hunters following a known trail. They weren't searching randomly. They were searching with purpose, pre-instructed, unafraid of consequences. That meant one thing. They had done this before. She gripped her bag tighter. Inside it, the small USB drive felt heavier than a weapon, heavier than truth itself. She couldn't stop imagining Adam's face in the video, how desperately he spoke, how he kept looking back as if death was walking behind him. She remembered seeing him once in the elevator months ago. He'd smiled politely. Just a small, tired smile. She never thought she'd see him again, and certainly not like this. Dot at the intersection, a black SUV slowed beside her. Her heart slammed. She stepped back toward the sidewalk, pretending to check something on her phone. The window rolled down just a crack. A man's eyes glinted through the gap, watching her not casually, not curiously, but with intention. The same kind of intention she'd seen in the two men who searched the CEO's office. Maya looked away quickly and continued walking, her legs trembling so badly she could barely stay upright. By the time she reached her apartment, a small, rundown studio on the 4th floor of a building that smelled like damp wood and old paint, her hands were numb. She fumbled with her keys, glancing down the hallway twice before entering. Inside, she locked the door, slid the deadbolt, then dragged the small dresser in front of it. Only when she was sure no one could enter did her breath finally break into sharp, uneven gasps. She pulled the USB drive from her pocket and stared at it under the dim kitchen light. Adam died trying to expose the truth. Greta died because she spoke it. And now, without meaning to, Maya had stepped into their place. She wasn't brave like them. She wasn't powerful. She didn't even know where to begin, but something in her shifted that night. Not a scream, not a battle cry, but a quiet promise. A vow whispered into the dark, tiny room she called home. If Westbridge Communications had killed to protect their secrets, then she would burn their entire brand to expose them, and for the first time in years, she felt her heartbeat steady, not with fear, but with purpose. Asterisk, she placed the USB drive on her small table and stared at it as if it were alive. Outside, sirens echoed faintly, bouncing off the soaked streets. She wondered if they were coming for her. Paranoia crawled under her skin, but it wasn't entirely paranoia, not after seeing those men, not after hearing their cold certainty. She moved to her window and pulled the curtains shut, leaving the room in a soft, uneven glow from her single lamp. Her phone buzzed once. A notification. Then another. She froze. Both messages were system alerts, unauthorized access attempt blocked. Her breath caught. Someone was already trying to enter her cloud storage. That meant they knew what had been opened. They didn't have proof she had the file yet, but they suspected someone. Someone small. Someone easy to silence. Maya sat on the edge of her bed, heart pounding, and whispered to herself, "They're watching already." But even through the fear, one truth rose stronger. She couldn't back out now. Not after what she'd seen. Not after what Westbridge had done. The war didn't start tomorrow. It had already begun. Maya barely slept that night. Every creak in the hallway felt like footsteps. Every car outside sounded like an engine slowing in front of her building. She kept the USB drive under her pillow, as if holding it closer would somehow protect her. But when dawn finally crept through the blinds, she realized two things. She couldn't stay in her apartment, and she couldn't go to work acting like nothing happened. Westbridge Communications monitored everything: badge swipes, computer usage, even elevator logs. The moment she walked in, someone would be watching her, but she needed more information. She needed to understand what Adam found, whatever was important enough to get a man fired, hunted, and silenced. Maya showered quickly, dressed in plain clothes, and left her apartment building through the side stairwell, avoiding the main entrance. The morning air felt too sharp, every sound too close. She kept her head down as she walked toward a small cafe 3 blocks away. It was always quiet, run by an older couple who didn't ask questions. Perfect. She sat in the corner, plugged in her laptop, and inserted the USB drive. Her hands shook as she opened the folder titled Project Harbor. Inside were dozens of documents, spreadsheets, recordings, and scanned contracts. She clicked the first file, an internal memo marked Confidential. As she read, her stomach twisted. Westbridge had been running a covert operation for one of its biggest clients. Valiant Dynamics, a defense contracting company tied to overseas surveillance programs. The memo laid out details of a political scandal involving illegal data extraction from civilian networks. Greta, the employee who died accidentally, had discovered inconsistencies in the reporting. She had written to the board, demanded a formal review, and even contacted an outside journalist. Her emails were never delivered. Instead, she was flagged as a serious internal threat. A week later, she drowned during a weekend boating trip. Maya scrolled through more files, her heart pounding. Adam had gathered proof timestamps, server logs, copied emails, confidential financial statements. He tracked payments made to investigators, a private crisis firm, and 2 unnamed operational consultants. One line stopped her breath entirely. Risk neutralized pending confirmation. Risk neutralized. These weren't just cover-ups. These were coordinated eliminations. Maya leaned back, her mind spinning. She felt like she was reading the blueprint of a criminal empire disguised as a PR firm. Every detail, every signature from the CEO's desk confirmed it. Greta didn't die by accident. Adam didn't disappear by choice. And Westbridge wasn't just cleaning reputations, they were destroying people. Her hands tightened into fists. She closed the laptop slowly and tried to breathe. But the air felt thinner, like the world had shrunk around her. She needed help, but who? The police? Impossible. The company had connections everywhere. Journalists? They could expose her identity too soon, a lawyer? Too dangerous without proof of safety. Then her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Stop looking. Go to work. Keep quiet. Last warning. Her skin crawled. That wasn't random. Someone knew where she was, what she was doing. She looked around the cafe, just 2 old men reading newspapers and a young mother with her baby. No one suspicious. No one staring. She turned her phone face down, her pulse thundering. She couldn't stay. She closed her laptop and stood up, forcing her steps to stay calm. As she stepped outside, she noticed something chilling, a black sedan parked across the street. The same kind she saw last night. Windows tinted so dark she couldn't see inside. She walked too fast. The sedan didn't move, but that almost made it worse. The calm before the storm. 2 blocks later, she ducked into an alleyway, pressed her back against the wall, and whispered, "Think, Maya. Think." She wasn't trained for this. She wasn't a hacker or a spy. She was just a junior PR girl who fetched coffees and fixed slide decks. But maybe that was her advantage. People who underestimate you never see you coming. Her next move had to be big enough to disrupt Westbridge's control, but subtle enough that they wouldn't immediately trace it back to her. She needed to test the power she now held. Even if it was just a small spark, she pulled out her laptop again, connected to a public Wi-Fi network, and opened an anonymous email account. She wrote a single sentence and attached one minor file, a harmless internal report stating that Westbridge executives had lied about a canceled product launch. Not dangerous. Not criminal, but embarrassing, something that would grab attention without revealing the truth. She sent it to a mid-level tech blogger known for exposing corporate slip dash-ups. Then she closed the laptop gently and whispered to herself, "Let's see how fast you react." That afternoon, Westbridge Communications exploded with panic. The leaked file went viral, and news outlets started asking questions. The company immediately forced all employees into emergency crisis mode. Maya watched the chaos unfold on her phone from a distance, her heart racing not with fear this time, but with a strange, rising clarity. She had barely scratched the surface, and the giants were already stumbling. For the first time since this nightmare began, Maya realized something terrifying and empowering. She didn't have to run forever. She could fight back. She could burn their brand down, piece by piece, until the world saw who they truly were. And Daniel Grayson, the CEO, who thought she was just an invisible girl on the 25th floor. He had no idea she had just made her first move. As the story spread online, Maya kept her distance. She walked through crowded blocks with her hood pulled low, ducking into a small bookstore to watch the chaos from the safety of anonymity. News alerts flooded her phone. Westbridge Communications under fire. Internal leak raises questions. Anonymous source exposes corporate lie. Reporters on Twitter were speculating wildly, arguing over whether the leak came from a disgruntled employee or a hacked server. No one suspected someone like her. Not yet, but she knew Westbridge would respond too fast. They weren't afraid of public image. They controlled public image. This leak wasn't enough to damage them, but it was enough to irritate them, enough to make them tighten their surveillance and search more aggressively for internal threats. She had poked a sleeping wolf, and wolves didn't stay asleep for long. Her phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. She hesitated, then opened the message. Unauthorized publication traced to internal device. Investigation underway. A chill ran down her spine. Not a threat this time, an update. A warning masked as an internal memo. They were closing in, narrowing the circle. She had to move fast if she wanted to stay ahead. She slipped deeper into the bookstore aisle, pretending to browse while her mind raced. Maybe she needed allies, or at least someone outside the system. But who? The media. Too early, the law. Too corrupt. Activists? Too unpredictable. Every option seemed like exposing herself to more danger. She needed leverage, not chaos. She needed to gather information, find out how far this corruption went, and understand the ecosystem Daniel Grayson had built, and she needed to know why Adam had said Greta was gone. What had she discovered before they silenced her? Maya bought a small notebook and pen from the store counter. She didn't dare keep digital notes anymore. Everything digital could be tracked. She stepped outside and found a quiet bench near a fountain where the sound of water would mask her breathing. She flipped open the notebook and wrote her first question. Who else knew? Adam couldn't have worked alone. People who uncover massive fraud rarely move solo. Somewhere in the labyrinth of Westbridge's servers, files, and forgotten drive archives, there had to be more threads. More names. More proof. Then she wrote a second question. Why didn't Adam release the files earlier? If he had everything, why hold on to it? Why meet the CEO secretly in a parking garage? Why confront him? It didn't make sense unless her heart jumped. Unless Adam had been negotiating for his life. Or trying to protect someone else. Someone still alive. She felt a sudden urgency, the kind that tightened around her ribs. If Adam had been protecting someone, that person could be in danger right now. Or worse, they could know something that connected directly to her. She stood up, adrenaline rushing through her, and headed back toward the crowded street. The noise of the city swallowed her footsteps, but her mind stayed sharp. She needed to return to the files on the USB, but she couldn't go home. They would be watching her apartment. Maybe they were already inside. She turned sharply, heading toward a public library several blocks away. It had old computers, outdated security systems, and anonymous internet access, a perfect place to dig deeper without leaving tracks. Inside the library, she chose a corner computer with a cracked screen. She plugged in the USB drive and opened the next folder, Employee Notes, redacted. Dozens of handwritten scans filled the screen. These weren't official documents. These were Adam's personal notes. One note stood out, scribbled urgently in bold strokes. G isn't the only one. There's another. Someone in-house. Someone scared. Maya leaned closer, heart hammering in her chest. Someone in-house? Still working at Westbridge? Someone who knew the truth but hadn't come forward? She kept scrolling, scanning every line, every incomplete thought. At the bottom of one page was a name half-erased, scratched over so violently the ink tore the paper. But a few letters remained. Eli? Elena? Elliot? Eliza? The possibilities were endless, but one thing was clear. Adam wasn't alone. By the time dawn broke over Halcyon Heights Hospital, the entire building was buzzing like a shaken hive. Nurses whispered. Security guards marched up and down hallways. Executives locked their office doors. And in the center of this chaos stood one man they all used to ignore, Samuel Reed, the quiet janitor who once mopped floors in silence, now holding the power to end careers, expose crimes, and rewrite the future of the hospital, because in his hands was the evidence, not rumors. Not suspicions, not complaints that HR could bury, but hard proof, recordings, documents, deleted files he recovered, voice clips, and time-stamped footage showing exactly what the wealthy hospital board had done. The financial fraud, the patient neglect, the medicine theft, the insurance scams, the cover-ups, the bribes, all of it woven into a dark empire hidden behind polished hallways and fake smiles. For years Samuel watched them. For years they mocked him. For years they believed he was invisible, but invisible people see everything. The boardroom SHOWDOW when the board summoned him, assuming they could intimidate him like always. Samuel didn't walk in as a janitor. He walked in like a man carrying the weight of hundreds of victims. The executives sat stiffly around the long marble table, pretending to be calm. Samuel, Chairman Dalton forced a smile. I'm sure there's been a misunderstanding. There has been, Samuel replied. For 10 years. He placed a single drive on the table. A vice president reached for it, but Samuel stopped him. That's not for you, he said. It's already backed up. Already sent out? Already protected. Their faces shifted from arrogance to fear. Then Samuel told them exactly what he had seen. The illegal surgeries performed for cash, the expired medications relabeled to save money. The nurses fired for refusing to stay silent, the staged reports to cheat insurance companies. The patient whose death they covered up to avoid a lawsuit, and then he revealed the last piece. Audio of Chairman Dalton ordering a senior doctor to falsify medical records. The room fell silent. Dalton's voice trembled. Samuel, what do you want? Samuel looked around the table and saw not leaders, but cowards trying to hide behind money, power, and titles. I want justice, he said. The city explodes with UNEWS by noon. The story was everywhere, the biggest scandal in the city's medical history. Reporters swarmed the hospital. Police arrived with warrants. Patients demanded answers. Staff who had been silenced for years finally spoke out, and the headline that ran across every screen was the one no executive expected. The janitor who exposed a billion-dollar crime network. Samuel didn't do interviews. He didn't seek fame. He simply stood outside the hospital and watched as justice rolled in like a storm he had summoned himself. The unexpected TWST, the mayor, impressed by Samuel's courage, offered him a new position, not as a janitor, not as an assistant, but as head of hospital ethics and compliance. A man they once ignored was now the man they had to answer to. And because the hospital stock crashed, investigations froze executive assets, and insurance companies pulled contracts, something unbelievable happened. The board was forced to sell the hospital, and in a poetic twist of fate, thanks to whistleblower rewards, legal compensation, and a private investor who admired his integrity, Samuel Reed became part owner of the very hospital where he once pushed a mop, the ending that shocked everyone months later. While walking through the renovated lobby, a young nurse whispered to her friend, "Is that the new owner?" "No," the other replied softly. "That's the janitor they laughed at." Samuel heard it. He didn't turn around. He didn't need applause. He just smiled, the quiet, satisfied smile of a man who took down a corrupt empire, without ever raising his voice, because true power doesn't need noise. It only needs courage. But even after becoming part owner of Halcyon Heights Hospital, Samuel Reed's battle wasn't over. Exposing corruption destroyed the old regime, but cleaning the damage they left behind. That required a different kind of strength. And Samuel had it. The aftermath nobody saw. 2 months after the scandal, the hospital hallways were still carrying the scars of the chaos. Patients were afraid, families demanded answers, and reporters camped outside daily. Many employees were divided. Some grateful Samuel revealed the truth. Others quietly resentful because they feared losing their jobs. Rumors spread. Maybe he did it for money. Maybe he wanted revenge. Maybe he's not as innocent as he looks. Samuel heard everything. He ignored everything. He wasn't fighting for approval. He was fighting for dignity, for fairness, for those who'd been abused by the powerful for too long. And every day he walked those hallways as a leader. He remembered exactly what it felt like to scrub floors at 2 a.m. while executives laughed at him. That memory kept him humble. That memory kept him strong. The return of the one person he feared one afternoon. As Samuel left a meeting with the new ethical board, he saw someone waiting near the elevators, Dr. Elena Marquette, the brilliant but controversial surgeon who had vanished the night the scandal broke. The city thought she had fled. Investigators thought she was hiding, but here she was, calm, dressed in a dark coat, eyes full of a strange mix of guilt and defiance. "Samuel," she said softly, "we need to talk." He paused. He remembered her clearly, the one doctor who had always looked conflicted, the one who tried to resign twice, the one who seemed trapped between doing her job and pleasing the corrupt board. "What do you want?" he asked. "To tell the rest of the truth," she whispered. She handed him an envelope, thick, sealed, and marked with security stamps. Samuel opened it carefully. Inside were files, medical logs, private emails, secret memos, and worst of all, footage showing 4 surgeries done for wealthy clients who wanted to skip waiting lists. Samuel's heart pounded. This wasn't over. "Elena, why bring this to me?" "Because you're the only one who didn't look away," she replied, her voice cracking. "And because I was part of it. Not directly, but I stayed silent. I'm ready to face the consequences." Samuel studied her carefully. He didn't know whether to trust her, but he knew the truth. When he saw it, and the truth was darker than anyone. Imagine. The final investigatio and the second wave of revelations hit the city harder than the first. This time, the story wasn't just corruption, it was medical exploitation. Public outrage exploded. Samuel gave the evidence to investigators. Elena turned herself in, requesting to cooperate fully. And soon more employees stepped forward, nurses, anesthesiologists, clerks, and even a few security guards who had been ordered to destroy files. Everyone was finally speaking up because one janitor showed them silence wasn't safety. It was surrender, the last scene, a full circle 6 months after the final arrests. The hospital held a reopening ceremony. New leadership. New ethics board. A new name. Hopeview Medical Center. During the ceremony, the mayor invited Samuel to speak. The crowd cheered as he stepped onto the stage. Something he never imagined in his life. He took a breath. I didn't expose them because I was brave, he said. I exposed them because the people they hurt had no voice. I used mine because no one noticed when I spoke quietly. So I learned to speak with actions. Applause shook the room, and to anyone watching this who feels invisible, remember this: invisible is not powerless. Invisible sees everything. And one day, invisible becomes unforgettable. He stepped down, not as a hero, not as a millionaire, not as a symbol, but simply as Samuel Reed, the man who refused to let corruption win.